I used to work in a mid-sized printing company that ran 3 shifts, and at the time I worked the evening shift with a small team of 8 people. One of them was a man named Travis, who at first came off as a shy but polite guy. He barely spoke, always kept his head down, and seemed to prefer working alone. Nobody thought much of it because many people in that job were quiet, but there was something strange about Travis that slowly began to show itself in small, unsettling ways that we ignored at first. He never smiled, not once, even when someone cracked a joke or when something funny happened around him. He watched people carefully like he was studying them, and sometimes we'd catch him standing completely still in the hallway, staring off into space like he was in some trance. One night, near the end of our shift, I stayed behind a few minutes to finish a print order while everyone else left. I was alone in the building until I suddenly heard footsteps echoing somewhere down the hall. The building was large and mostly empty, and sound carried strangely through it. At first, I thought it was just security doing their rounds, but the footsteps were slow, too slow, almost dragging. When they turned the corner, I saw Travis walking toward me, but the way he moved was off. His head was tilted slightly, and his eyes were locked directly on me without blinking. I greeted him casually, but he didn't respond. He just kept coming closer. When he finally reached me, he stopped only a few feet away and whispered, "You should go home now." His voice was cold, almost eager. I left without asking questions, feeling uneasy the whole night. The next day, one of my coworkers told me something that made my skin crawl. Earlier that day, someone found a stack of printed papers jammed into a trash bin behind one of the machines. They were filled with violent writings, all typed in the same font we used for regular orders. Pages and pages of disturbing stories describing murders, revenge fantasies, and long hateful rants about people in our workplace. The handwriting at the bottom of some notes matched Travis's signature. Management questioned him, but he denied everything and claimed someone was framing him. Things escalated when items started disappearing from people's lockers. Photos, personal belongings, even a coworker's shoes. They would reappear in strange places, on top of machines, inside boxes, or in one case, carefully arranged in a circle on the break room table. Travis was always seen nearby when something odd happened. The tension grew until one night, our supervisor asked him directly if he was behind all of it. That night, the supervisor's car was keyed so deeply that it tore the metal. Someone had carved the word "watching" into the side. Security reviewed the cameras the next day. The footage gave us chills. At around 2 a.m., Travis was seen wandering the hallways of the facility, touching everyone's lockers, stopping to stare into the cameras with a blank expression. But the most disturbing part was when he approached the camera closest to the break room. He leaned in so close that his breath fogged the lens, then he smiled, slowly, unnaturally. It was the only time anyone had ever seen him smile. He was fired immediately, but the horror didn't end there. For weeks after, some of us got strange messages on social media from accounts with no profile picture. Messages like, "You left at the wrong time," or "You don't know what I wanted to do." One coworker even received a photo of the outside of their house at night. The police became involved, and after a long investigation, Travis was arrested for stalking and harassment. The notes found later at his home suggested he had been planning something violent, waiting for the right moment, watching us without us ever knowing. It changed the way I looked at people forever. The second story comes from a woman who worked as a receptionist in a medical office. Her name was Claire, and she enjoyed her job, her coworkers, and her daily routine. She never imagined that the person she sat next to for months was hiding a disturbing obsession. Her coworker, a woman named Jenna, was friendly and talkative. She brought snacks for everyone, asked personal questions, and made people feel included. But Claire always felt something was off. Jenna stared too long, laughed too loud, and always seemed overly interested in Claire's life, especially her dating life. She asked about Claire's boyfriend constantly, where he worked, what he looked like, how long they'd been together. At first, Claire thought Jenna was just curious, but soon Jenna's behavior became uncomfortable. She printed out photos from Claire's social media and pinned them to her cubicle, claiming she loved the aesthetic. She started buying the same clothes Claire wore, even mirroring her hairstyle. When Claire confronted her, Jenna laughed it off as admiration. But things escalated when Claire noticed her purse slightly open one afternoon. Inside, tucked next to Jenna's wallet, was a photograph of Claire and her boyfriend, one that Claire had never posted online. It had been taken through the window of her apartment. Terrified, Claire left work early and called her boyfriend. He told her something even stranger had happened the day before. Someone had slipped a note onto his car windshield that said, "You don't deserve her." Claire immediately suspected Jenna, but had no proof. The next morning at work, Claire found a small wrapped package on her desk. Inside was a bracelet with her name engraved, and a note that read, "Now you'll always think of me." Claire reported everything to management, but they insisted Jenna had not broken any specific workplace rules. That changed quickly when a doctor in the office reviewed the building's security footage and found something alarming. One night after closing, Jenna stayed inside the office for over an hour after everyone had left. She wasn't working. Instead, she walked to Claire's desk, opened drawers, smelled her sweater, and pocketed small items like pens and sticky notes. When confronted, Jenna broke down crying and admitted she felt a deep connection with Claire and believed they were destined to be best friends forever. But things took a darker turn when Claire found that her spare apartment key, kept in her desk emergency kit, was missing. Jenna denied taking it. That night, Claire stayed at her boyfriend's house out of fear. At 2 a.m., her phone started ringing over and over again, unknown number. When Claire finally answered, a whispering voice said, "Why aren't you home?" Police were called, and when they checked Claire's apartment, they found Jenna sitting on the floor in the dark, clutching one of Claire's shirts and sobbing uncontrollably. She had broken in using the missing key and told police she just wanted to feel close to her. She was arrested, and Claire quit her job soon after. The most disturbing part, police found dozens of photos of Claire in Jenna's home, including ones taken in places Claire didn't even know she was being watched. The third story involves a man named Daniel who worked in IT support for a large company. Daniel had a coworker named Mason, a quiet guy who kept to himself and never socialized. Mason wasn't rude, he was just invisible. Months passed without Daniel thinking much of him until the day Mason asked a strange question. He approached Daniel in the break room and casually asked if Daniel ever worried about people dying at work. Daniel laughed it off, but Mason continued, asking more questions about emergency exits, camera blind spots, and how easy it would be to cause chaos. Daniel felt uneasy but brushed it off as a weird conversation. But after that day, Mason's behavior became concerning. He often drew diagrams of the office layout in his notebook. He wrote down names of coworkers and circled some of them, and whenever someone frustrated him, he'd mutter unsettling things like, "Everyone gets what they deserve." Daniel reported it to HR, but they said Mason was harmless. One day, a fire alarm went off unexpectedly, and everyone evacuated. As they stood outside, someone noticed Mason wasn't with them. Daniel walked to the end of the building and saw Mason standing alone inside, watching everyone through the glass with a blank stare. When they called out to him, he didn't react. The alarm turned out to be false. But someone later found that the breaker controlling that zone had been pulled manually. The real horror came when Daniel arrived early one morning and spotted Mason working at his computer. Mason didn't hear him enter, and Daniel saw something chilling on the screen. A detailed plan outlining step-by-step instructions for harming his coworkers. Names of people in the office, routes through the building, timing estimates. It was like a blueprint for something horrific. When Mason realized Daniel was behind him, he slammed the laptop shut and stared at him with pure panic or rage. Daniel backed away slowly and went straight to HR. The company conducted an immediate investigation and discovered even more disturbing documents on Mason's computer, including searches for violent attacks, weapon instructions, and long journal entries describing his increasing hatred for specific coworkers. Police were called and Mason was taken in for questioning. He later admitted he wasn't planning anything yet, but said he fantasized about it daily. He was placed under psychiatric evaluation. Daniel later learned that Mason had been bullied at his previous job and had developed a deep resentment toward workplaces in general. But the horrifying truth was that the company and Daniel possibly prevented something catastrophic from happening simply by reporting something that others ignored. The last story comes from a retail worker named Lily who worked in a clothing store with about 15 employees. One of them was a middle-aged man named Carl who had been working there for years. He was friendly, helpful, and always ready to assist new hires. Most people liked him, but Lily always felt uncomfortable around him. Carl had a habit of standing too close, touching people lightly on the shoulder, or staring a little too long, but he never said anything threatening, so Lily tried to ignore it. One night, she was scheduled for closing shift with Carl. After they finished cleaning, Lily went to grab her bag from the back room. As she opened her locker, she saw something that made her knees go weak. Inside was a stack of photographs, pictures of her walking to work, entering her apartment building, and even sleeping. Someone had taken them through the window of her bedroom. She screamed, and Carl came running in. She immediately accused him, but he acted shocked. He insisted he had nothing to do with it. Lily didn't believe him and ran out of the building. She called the police, but when they checked the store's security cameras, Carl could be seen entering the back room earlier and opening her locker with a spare key. The most disturbing part, he placed something else inside her locker before putting the photos there. When police searched his apartment, they found a small hidden room filled with surveillance equipment, recordings, and hundreds of photos of Lily dating back several months. He had been stalking her since the first week she was hired. He followed her everywhere, watched her at home, and recorded her daily routine. He told police he fell in love. Lily quit her job and moved far away, but the trauma stayed with her, knowing she was being watched so closely without realizing it. These 4 disturbing coworker stories remind us that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who appear unimportant or friendly. They hide behind normal routines and familiar faces. The scariest part is that you never really know what someone is capable of until their mask slips. Always trust your instincts, even if they seem dramatic. Sometimes your instincts are the only thing standing between you and real horror. If you've ever experienced something unsettling at work, remember you're not alone, and sometimes speaking up can prevent something awful. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.